You're listening to today's episode of From the Horsebox, where we chat to people who live and love the countryside.
We have a golden nugget today. Born in 1927, she is passionate about farming and the environment.
Yes, the lorry is revving to motor at a speed of 2 minutes per decade.
No time for drinks today, Claire. Let's welcome Jill Hutchinson-Smith. How did you come to be called Jill?
On the way to my christening, my mother changed her mind. She had thought she would like to call me after a very loved great aunt Ursula, but as I'd been Jill from the moment I arrived, I was Jill for the rest of my life.
Your parents were living in Huxley, Cheshire, and bought Hinton in 1928 when your father was working at the Cotton Exchange in Liverpool. Tell us about their moving in.
My parents brought with them to Hinton from Huxley 10 cows, 5 heifers, 133 hens and some implements, all of which was valued at £383. They walked the cattle after milking from Huxley, some 12 miles, and my mother often described how they answered her when she called them up the drive after their long journey.
Together with your brother Giles and your cousins, what made your childhood so idyllic?
I think it was because we lived at Hinton on the farm where there were cattle and pigs, and there was always such a lot going on. The farm was our livelihood, but also we got to know the wildlife, birds and things that grew happily in hedgerows. And it was an unorganised childhood, so that we could ride our ponies to go and see friends or bicycles, and nobody ever worried about what we were doing. One of our lovely outings, I remember, we were very young, and we caught the train, my brother and I, to go and fish on the Tannet at Lannamunnock. So we got a train from Whitchurch to Oswestry and changed. We got the train to Lannamunnock, got off it. I think I was all of 10, he 13. We fished all day, and the return train was 5 o'clock in the evening, and we got home about 6:30. And my mother wasn't the least concerned. She said, "Did you have a lovely day?"
How marvellous. And you mentioned ponies there. Do you have a special childhood hunting story from when you were growing up?
Well, the one that I enjoy telling people many, many times, I always had to go home when I was hunting at 2 o'clock, and we'd gone on to draw maize fen. The ladies or gentlemen said, "Jill, it's time you went home." So very dutifully I set off for home. And when I got to Jackson's Bridge, which is the canal bridge onto our land, beside me there was a pack of hounds going absolutely flat out after the trail on my land. And so I was on my land with our hounds alone. And there was my mother on the top of the hill above the house. She couldn't believe what was happening. And I flew, my hounds in full cry, I flew past her. I finished up at Marbury, and that's where the other ladies and gentlemen caught us up. But to have our hounds by myself on our land, on my pony, was an experience never ever to happen again.
Fantastic.
What age were you then?
10.
10, goodness.
And you passed on the love of the Winstay hounds to all your family?
I think I have, actually. I think, yes. Aren't I lucky?
You are.
Especially Hugh, he's mad about them.
So, Jill, how and when did the cheese making start?
The cheese making started in 1933, when the price for milk was so low that my mother was loath to sell it to her buyer in Liverpool. So she decided that she would make cheese from her milk. And she had never made cheese. It just a lifetime, really, to learn the art. But she bought equipment to make it and had a little dairy on the yard on the farm. And when the day she started, she had a neighbour come and show her how to do it one day, kindly helped her. And the next day a neighbour came to help her. And the third day she was on her own, making cheese, and she'd never ever done it before. But she was very clever and learnt very quickly how to make it. And of course, the advantage of cheese making is the fact that the byproduct whey goes to feeding pigs, which is a really good ecological, if you like, conservation policy, because the pigs drink the whey and add to the fertility of the land, and therefore the land produces more grass, which then makes more milk for the cows. And so if you have more milk, more cows, more grass, more pigs, more manure, more grass. That's really interesting.
So, Jill, you went to school in Whitchurch until you were 14, when you went to Down House near Newbury, and we were at war. How did you cope?
I don't think there was any particular problem. Everybody was coping. We all just got on with what had to be done. My mother was farming hard. My father was serving, and so was my brother. And getting on the train, going to school was just perfectly normal, straightforward. I don't think we thought of coping. I think we just got on with what had to be done at the time. And also, I think emotion was very much in control. When you said goodbye to your brother or father, and they only had 48 hours embarkation leave anyway, the great thing is to go fishing or play tennis or have a nice day, and no tears. That wasn't on.
This compares with today's crisis, when we're all very emotional, aren't we, about what's happening today?
Well, emotion is not, I think, really, as we were faced with a life or death situation, because we so easily could have been overrun by the Germans. We were led by Winston Churchill, who was probably the greatest Englishman ever lived.
Now, you read agriculture at Edinburgh University. Did you always want to take on the farm and the cheese making?
I always wanted to farm, whether I farmed at Hinton or not. I don't know whether that was my ambition, but
this course at Edinburgh must have been quite exacting. How did you find the actual scientific side of the course?
The beginning of the course, which the first year was pure science, the same as doctors, was very tough. The botany and the zoology I passed very easily, but the chemistry was difficult, but the physics was almost impossible. A, I didn't understand it. B, I'm hopeless at mathematics.
With 3 girls and 40 men on your course, you loved university, especially the Scottish dancing. You also fished and climbed mountains, and you had your first trip abroad.
Our first trip abroad was enormously exciting, accompanied by Helen and Celia Livingston, who shared a landing with me in my residence in Edinburgh. And we only had £25 because that's the only amount of money you could take. So we decided that we would hitchhike, which was extremely dangerous. What my mother would have thought about that, I have no idea. But we hitchhiked all the way to Switzerland. And I think we came back by train because I think we had to get back and it was too far to hitchhike all the way. But on the thumb, people stopped and picked us up. Invariably asked, how is Mr. Churchill, when we said that we were English. And he was revered throughout France, really, throughout Europe.
You were also the first woman to be awarded the Nuffield Scholarship. As well as being an amazing achievement, this must have had a huge effect on your life.
The Nuffield revolutionised my life because it meant that I could travel abroad and visit farming. On my scholarship, I went to Sweden, Denmark and Holland because I was interested in cows and their metabolism, which is what I did my scholarship on dairy cattle. Because of being a Nuffield scholar, one has contacts worldwide with other scholars, and it's a fellowship of friends. And when we have a scholars' reunion, or we have a conference day every year, summer in the United Kingdom, or a worldwide one, and we gather together and discuss the issues of the day and listen to the papers that are being given by the modern returning scholars. It is now set up as a worldwide organisation to enhance and grow the knowledge of farming throughout the world. It's a wonderful family to which to belong, and I feel very privileged to be a Nuffield scholar, and also to have been one time chairman of the Nuffield Scholars Association, which was an unusual thing to find myself doing.
That's an amazing thing to hear about, Jill. Thank you.
So, as you said, with the scholarship came more travelling. Are there any special moments you would like to share with us?
I think that being able to make contact with other people farming worldwide is positive, but also at one stage we were asked to go and re-establish the farming in East Prussia. As a group, Nuffield scholars were asked to go, and it was quite a tricky thing to do because the chap who was in charge of that part of the world was rather reluctant to support us. But meanwhile, we took our cheese vats from Hinton and laid it on a lorry and started to make cheese in a place called Kaliningrad. which was not easy, but it was a fascinating outing because we were making cheese with milk that had been standing in a wee tankard outside a cottage for some time and therefore wasn't likely to be of very good quality. So making cheese in Kaliningrad with our cheese vats and their milk was quite a challenge.
Did this cheese-making venture in Russia take root? Did they continue to
It's a very
progress?
good question. The answer was that the lady who was in charge of the dairy came to Hinton to see how we were doing it. And luckily, she was an independent authority. Meanwhile, there was a reluctance from the overseers, the communist overseers, because they didn't like
It was
us.
political, was it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the whole of Kaliningrad, East Prussia, was wasteland. And so we tried to get seed corn in, which we did quite a lot. They hadn't got any seed corn, and they hadn't got any combines because the combine belts had been used to mend their shoes. So if you haven't got a plough, and you haven't got a combine, you haven't got a seed, you were really struggling. So we were absolutely determined to try and help them get started. And I think we did quite well. I think we did quite well to start off with, in spite of the political resistance.
So not only did you revolutionise cheese-making in Cheshire, you also did so in Russia. It's amazing.
I don't know about that.
While David was in the RAF, you had many postings, but with your children, Rupert, Celia and Giles, returned to Hinton in 1967 to take up the reins. And most people remember that year for Foot and Mouth. What was it like?
Foot and Mouth was a very worrying, upsetting time to be farming, equally for everybody who had cloven-footed animals. And it was started in the market in Ostia at the end of October 1967. It's written on my heart because it was wind-borne and there was westerly winds, as you know, living in our part of the world, the wind comes from Wales. And the Foot and Mouth then was wind-borne and touched down every 3 or 4 days. So it started near Ostia, and then Ellesmere got it, and then Woodchurch got it, and then going east like Nantwich. So gradually the whole of North Shropshire, South Cheshire, Foot and Mouth was rife, and it was a horrid time for everybody because everybody who got it had to have their horses, their cattle slaughtered and pigs because it's so catching.
So did you manage to escape?
We were enormously fortunate in escaping it, and I think it's largely because we were on the top of the hill, and I think the wind blew over the top of us, and therefore we didn't catch it. But we didn't go anywhere. We didn't go shopping. Very kindly neighbours used to drop our shopping at the end of the drive. So the children didn't go to school. Celia and Giles were at school in Woodchurch, but they didn't go for that, nor did other children go to school. Other farm children didn't go either. It's rather like the endemic now. It's rather similar sort of way of handling it. But it was horrid because when the cattle were slaughtered, they were either buried or burnt. And the quickest way was to burn them. Burying them meant that you had to get a JCB and dig a hole and bury them. But burning was considered to be a better way of getting rid of them because then the whole countryside smelt of burning wood and burning cattle. We lived in a sort of pall of smoke for some weeks, which was not pleasant. And of course, there was a great rapport with everybody because everybody wanted to help one another. Everybody was frightened of Foot and Mouth. And the reason that we had to slaughter the animals was that if we hadn't, it would have become endemic, which means there for always. So it would always reappear again. And England decided, the Ministry of Agriculture decided we do not want endemic Foot and Mouth because if we had, we would not be able to export our livestock, which is one of the main sources of agricultural income, is sending livestock overseas.
So it had to be done.
It had to be done.
I believe David helped you with the weather forecasting and the winds from the Air Ministry where he was stationed.
Absolutely he did, because he would go to the top of the roof of the Air Ministry and see which way the wind was blowing in Shropshire and could forecast then more or less accurately where the next cases were likely to occur.
Having escaped Foot and Mouth, together with David, you started to develop Blue Cheshire cheese, and your farming enterprise expanded. What exactly was this new cheese?
Blue Cheshire was something that had happened by mistake for some years, and nobody knew why it had happened. Possibly the cheese had been left in a draft, or it had been dropped by the dairymaid. Then a man called Geoffrey Hutchinson, who is no relation at all, fun enough, had a warehouse in Whitchurch in Orkington Road, where he bought cheese that he thought if he kept them they might go blue. And he was very clever at selecting the sort of cheese that he thought would go blue. And when he took them down to his warehouse, he had 2 or 3 men working for him, and they had a skewer, and they skewered the cheese to let the air in, because blue mould needs, Penicillium roqueforti needs air to grow. And so he started a business selling Blue Cheshire, but he never made cheese. And his business expanded and expanded. But really, the original Blue Cheshire happened by mistake. It was just an accident, and nobody knew why it had happened. But he cleverly built his business on the mistake. And then I thought, when he died and there was no Blue Cheshire, the Milk Marketing Board said to me, would you like to see if you can make... I said to them, I think, can I see if I can make Blue Cheshire on purpose? And they said, all right, you have a go. We had good friends, and they thought it was another way of selling milk, of course. So we set about... I thought if it happened by mistake, it must be possible to do it. And it took probably some years to discover exactly how it was done by trial and error, because the first cheese we made were the original Cheshire State 12 and 13-inch across cheese, which are much too big and fat to go blue. You need a tall cheese like a chimney pot, like a Stilton, to ease the bluing. But it took us a long time to learn exactly how to do it and how to handle the milk and which bacteria to use in the milk to make the cheese that we wanted to go blue. But eventually, there was a lot of trial and error. We found out how to do it. And eventually we found out how to do it every time, and we got every cheese to go blue. But that took me 10 years to learn how.
Promoting and exhibiting Blue Cheshire cheese took you all over the world. Can you mention a few highlights and some of the people you met along the way?
We were fortunate to be asked, for some reason or other, to a reception at number 10 Downing Street, where we met lots of people and had a lovely time. But the next morning, we were meeting our sales team, employed by the Milk Marketing Board, in some offices in Conduit Street. And they all said to us what to do. Well, they were talking about what they'd they evening before, and they said they'd been to the theatre or they'd done something nice. What do you do? They said to us. And we said, we spent the evening at number 10 Downing Street, which did an enormous amount of good.
And who was the Prime Minister?
Mrs. Thatcher.
Oh, goodness me.
Who took David by the arm and said, what do you do? And he said, I make cheese. And she said, oh, really? Interesting. Come with me. I want to show you the pictures I've got. I've got rid of all these British historians, and I've now filled the walls with pictures of the scientists. So she had Boyle and Faraday, and off they went together. She's a very bossy lady, but it was great.
Well, she was a scientist, wasn't she? And a grocer's daughter, so doubly she would be interested.
Exactly.
Yes.
She rather took to David.
What else did you enjoy doing away from the farming?
Well, sailing was one of the things we enjoyed thoroughly, mostly in North Wales at Abersoch, which was easy to... We had a nice place to sail, and we had dinghies where the children all learned to sail. And we had a bigger boat on a mooring at Abersoch. And also we stayed at a very nice house called Halfrin, with the Hanmer family. I think for some years we had a holiday there. It became a yearly delight to share that house.
Instead of our quick-fire questions today, we have amazing achievements. These being...
2 COVID vaccines.
A magistrate for 25 years.
The first female to become a Fellow of the Royal Agricultural Society of England, and later its chairman.
A member of the Winstay Pony Club Committee and currently still its president.
Together with Christine Jones, running the Winstay Farming and Wildlife Competition.
Hosting regular farm visits at Hinton, ranging from the NFU and the ladies from the WI.
But you especially enjoyed the school trips, and I know you have a lovely story.
The lovely thing was having school children from the towns. We had one visit when the children got off the bus in the middle of the farmyard, and one small chap, aged 11 or thereabouts, with his socks round his ankle, his cap on the back of his head, leapt off the bus with great glee and said to me, "Where's the farmer?" I said, "I'm the farmer." And he said, "You can't be, you're only using a very naughty word, woman." I've often laughed about that. He obviously had a vision of what he thought a farmer should look like, and I disappointed him greatly. I had no breeches, no gaiters, no cap, and no coat.
That's a lovely story. It was also on one of these trips that ultimately led to Celia's marriage to Roger.
We had many visits to the farm and the dairy, one of whom was George Douglas. Anyway, cut a long story short, we met George Douglas at the Royal Show and arranged for Rupert to go as a pupil to him for a year and learn about farming in East Anglia. Celia went to keep house for Rupert while he was helping Roger and helping George, and met Roger, which is how the fact that Celia and Roger eventually married each other.
And the rest is history.
Yes, I like that.
In the late 80s, you decided to sell the cheesemaking. Briefly, can you tell us why?
We needed to expand. The business had got so grown out of its premises, and we needed to build a new creamery and start again, and with a huge input of capital. And we thought, is this sensible? Will our family want to follow it on? It was at the top of its turnover, because we always sell a business on the turnover at that time. And we thought, I think this is the time maybe to sell the business, which was really a recipe. That's all what was in my head. And we decided to do that and to sell the business to the Stilton people, who very badly wanted to buy it because they wanted to buy the opposition, because obviously we were doing well. They wanted to buy our market.
You are now amongst friends and family in Malpas. Tell us about your new life.
Having lived at Hinton Bank Farm from my very early childhood, farmed there, brought up our children, and naturally lived in retirement at the Manor House, I could never have imagined leaving Hinton. However, my idea for possible change was hugely encouraged by Celia. Without her moral effort, endless kindness, and Herculean efforts, I would never have been able to move. I am now living in the village of Malpas, only 4 miles from Hinton, in the perfect house for someone of 90. I have fabulous views from my chair over Shropshire, charming neighbours, garden soil to die for, and goldfinches. I am warm and comfortable, with bags of space, and to use Moll's most favourite word, content.
Jicky, would you like to finish with your favourite saying?
I think possibly a useful saying is better late than never.
Jicky, thank you so much. I do remember hearing you say hunting is worth a guinea a minute. Well, today's chat is too.
Yes, thank you, Jicky. It's been such fun. We would also like to thank Shirley for sending this out, and to all our listeners for joining us. If you have enjoyed it, please share and tell your friends.
From April, we're planning to use an official podcast platform, and we will tell you exactly how to find us.
Meanwhile, stay safe, and we look forward to our next episode of From the Horsebox, when it could be you in the driving seat.